Now on the last tape, we ran out of tape actually. I pulled up my 2 strips of tape, and that sets me back 1/4 of an inch. So now I have a reasonably good line to run along. There's a problem because of these little tip, and these are these little semi-scale things, which I'm sure in time will get to be the biggest pain in the ass on a plane. I need to cut this back with a Zona saw so I get a nice square edge there after I'm done carving, and then I'll work my way pretty much just like I did on the flaps. I want to get a nice straight 90-degree cut right at the end of this little scale edge we have here. Now step 1 is I want to carve right into that. Otherwise I'm not going to have a nice 90-degree edge somewhere down the road. I may as well, I could do this on the edge of a table, but it really won't matter. I'm going to rough this out. Always use a 26 blade. The longer the blade, the better control you'll have. Okay, I don't want to end uneven here. Always try to get it off in one piece if you can. Let's show this up close. You can see roughly how close I've come to. A little high spot, I'll take this off with the sanding block, and I'll just work this down, constantly watching that I'm not taking a line off. This was the important thing, is to get that edge up there. Otherwise I'm going to lose that little semi-scale little gizmo counterbalance there. I'm sure Joe would shoot me if I lost his little counterbalance. I want to maintain that little corner there, so I'm going to go a little slower than normal. Don't want to lose that corner. And as soon as I get this carved in that corner, the next step will be to get some thin CA on it and get it hardened up so we don't lose that corner every time we walk by it or touch it or whatever. Just remember, we always have these, shall we say, bull in a china shops walking around the shop here, fondling things. Now I want to get a block with a real good square edge right in there. I'll show this up on a macro lens. This is the kind of thing that's really a delicate operation to get that corner just right. And I'll finish this off. And try just, in an all perfect world, you would just leave the ink line on. What I want to do is, I'll put that where these edges are. As soon as I carve an edge and I get a 90-degree edge, I want to harden it up with thin CA. Otherwise it just takes, it's too risky. Q-tips will kick it. Now I can walk this over and do the other side. Let's see these little counterbalances here. These are one of the little details we want to have. This is all hardened up with CA. Sooner you can harden it up, in fact this whole edge here, as soon as I get the other side carved, I'll hit this all with thin CA and blend it in. It hardens the wood up. This is going to be a vulnerable piece until we get it tissued. Again, I want to work my way right down. You can see one end, one edge, and just, if in an all perfect world, leave the line on. That would just about be perfect. Alright, what I'm going to do is flip the bottom of this over, repeat the whole process on the bottom off camera, and we'll be ready to go on to the next step. And it really is a lot of work getting these little points in exactly the way we want them. I'm just getting a little final sanding here, and what I want to do is, And anytime you have vulnerable little pieces like this, you want to harden them up with CA as soon as possible. Now I hope that stuff stinks. I hope this is going to protect them. But if somewhere down the road you see that I've broken them off, you know I'm certainly not perfect, that's for sure. We even kick that off, and then I'll just dress this off. Since I have 4 of these to do today, in fact I'm going to do one tail and then work on the other one. Try to get one done in case Joe can stop by and pick up the tails. Again, I want to give Joe the lighter of the 2 when we're finished, because I feel like I can do the finish lighter than he can, and they'll both come out weighing relatively the same weight. That may be a good philosophy. Okay, this one part is done. You can see I've left on just enough of the material that I have an incline to work off when I set up that little tool to cut the hinge pockets. Alright, I got 2 elevators, those hinges. Boy, is this a lot of work, I'm telling you, unbelievable. And what I want to do, I want to make sure I have just enough clearance in the middle here for the horn. Next step is going to be I'm going to sink the horn into the trailing edge, pretty much the same as we did in the back of the wing. One consideration here though, and let me take the elevators off. One consideration you want to look at all the sheeting on one side and see which side, because this is symmetrical of course, which side has the nicer sheeting. This one has a big water stain spot there. I guess we'll use this for the top. So you can decide which is the nicer of the 2 sides of sheeting, and then of course we'll get ready to sink the horn in there. I want to mark how far out my notch is going to go, and then in here this will be notched away. Like to make the notch as reasonably small as possible, don't want any extra notch, and then we'll have to connect this. The little piece of tin strapping will end there. Alright, first thing we're going to cut that notch and lay out that little gap for the horn. I notched that out with the Zonosaur, of course. I just have a piece of sandpaper, sticky back sandpaper glued. Want to make it nice and neat, get enough clearance. Now what Joe has done is, where the trailing edge is 1/4 inch, in here he's put in a splice, a cross splice, so you'd like to make this notch obviously as small as possible. I just took an old 11 blade and gouged out a little spot just so I could shove those little aluminum tabs from the horn in. Now I just want to do a dry fit here. I press this right in. Actually, I can just take the end of the wire and make this a little bit more pronounced so I can get a little more clearance on the horn. I'll have to open up that little slot just a little bit. And always dry fit parts. It's the easiest way to get very close to what you expect. And I see I need a little more clearance. That's not giving me a full travel. I can just make a little indentation there. Now I can sand that down. You know, I got a little bit of the thick CA down where the horn goes. I want to keep the little horn brackets tight up on the up against the upright. Make sure it's lined up. Okay, I want to get one drop right on the wires of the chain lube. I want to make sure I have complete free movement. The chain lube will keep any CA that gets in there when I put my bracing around the back. Now this is a step you don't want to leave out on the elevators no matter what, is I want to get thin CA down into the little notch where the horn goes. The reason being, in time, oil is going to work its way down there. And get that Q-tip out of there. And I don't want the oil wicking into the trailing edge. The trailing edge is weakened enough having that gouge in there. And it still needs a little working in. Again, you can press it one way, then press it the other way. A little bit of pressure on there, I'll just put a little wear in, just till it's as free as can be. If it isn't as free as you're happy with, just go and put a little more chain lube on it. That looks like it's going to be okay. Okay. Now at this time too, I want to radius the trailing edge. If you leave a 90-degree edge there, it's like asking for trouble. You want to radius that as much as you can. Otherwise, you're not going to build up a little hard edge of finish. And as soon as you go to buff the plane, you'll buff through right on a trailing edge. So right on early in the program, as soon as you're happy with the way things are shaping up, get a little bit of a radius on that trailing edge. And actually all these edges a little bit. Okay, now the next step is I want to lay out, get the elevators over here and get the little slots cut for the tubes that are going to go on there. Pretty much the same as we did the flaps. Now believe it or not, one of the things you really have to be careful of doing here is not putting the Rabe rudder linkage on the wrong side of the tail. So I want to make sure I'm on this side. I'll do this one first. Measure it out for the dimension that you need the tube, where you need the tube to end. In fact, I'll measure them both out now. Cut off a piece of that aluminum tubing that'll go over the 1/8 inch horn. And I'll Dremel that notch right in there. Now I'm going to measure up so that all the pieces of tubing are the same length. It'll just be easier to do it this way. Just score it with the X-Acto. Deburr it inside. Get the burr out on both sides so you don't have any, how shall we say it, interference of fit. Now I'm just doing a little dry fit here to make sure, make sure that slot will accept this, and also then that it'll slide on a 90-degree angle without a problem. Because I want to set this clearance out at the tip. I don't want to have, I can adjust that clearance right now. Now what I did, I just put a couple of drops of CA, tacked that on there, because as I slide that back and forth I can set, and it'll be a very difficult fit to set this clearance. This is one of the downsides of having this kind of a tail. If you have a square tail where this hinge line just runs off the edge, you can set this any place. What we're doing is using that tube as the fine tuning to set that length so that all these blends blend right in. And I'm just tacking it in place. Once it's right, then I can finalize it with thick CA, thin CA, whatever. See now, as I set this in, I have too much clearance over there. I'll just take a couple more thousandths off of the tube. The tube will sink further in, and I can adjust, fine-tune that clearance. That's a real nice way to do it. Now one of the things that can happen is when you glue that tube in, of course, some thin CA can get in there. It's a good idea to just take a drill bit, 1/8 inch drill bit by hand, clean that out, I want to cap, there you go, nice. I want to cap this, I gotta sand this down anyway. I want to check the fit here. I want to check that the hinges are 90 degrees, that I don't have stress or tension on that one way or the other, because I could obviously still adjust it. The elevators are both flat at the same time. After I get the hinges on, if I have to, I can tweak that. And I want to take some 64th plywood with the grain going end to end and make a little cap for this. It'll just be a neater way to do it, cap this all off. Again, all you need to do is get some scrap. This will give it a nice edge and strengthen it just enough. Good idea to just leave it a little bit oversized for now. It's good when you make these caps, just leave them oversized. Fill in that little gouge in with some thick CA. And then I'll trim this off with sandpaper once it kicks off. Now a nice way to do this while it's setting up is you can press it down. This will make sure you get it nice and flat. Now I always like to harden up this little area right around the horn with some thin CA. Harden up the wood. If any gets into the tube, of course, constantly check it with that 1/8 inch drill. That'll just be a big help in keeping this, whoop, don't glue to there. I've glued the drill in there too. Just make sure you have a little bit of slop, a little bit of clearance. Once that's done, you can blend it right in. Now I'm just finishing off with a piece of 320 here, getting all the edges clean. This one is ready to go, and then I want to get the other side set up. Get the ray, Beretta linkage in there. Get a little radius on everything right away, as soon as possible. Catch that radius. Now you always have to put a little notch in there for horn clearance. Notice I recessed the tube back. Little clearance for the horn. That's a real nice straight elevator. Nice straight hinge line. This little area, which will be part of the semi-scale effect. Alright, now I got to set up the other one, and I got to get the parts for the Ray Beretta linkage out. Now on this side, I want to get a piece of 16th plywood on which I'm going to put that Ray Beretta ball link. So that's the next thing I want to have. Same piece I made on the other side, make it out of 16th plywood and get out the linkage, and then I'll dress this all off. Now what I'm going to do is laminate this piece out of 4 pieces. 4 pieces of 64th plywood so that it'll be stronger. The 16th plywood, and I have done it with 16th plywood, but I just want to improvise here a little bit, make this a little bit stronger. 4 laminates of 64th will give me a lot more strength. Now it's the same thing as when we make the horn up for the rudder. Plywood laminates. The 64th plywood with the grain all going in the right direction is just unbelievably strong. Okay, so we got 4 laminates of 64th here. We're ready to make up the cap. This is the ball link kit you'll need to do the Ray rudder linkage. You'll actually need 2 of these, one for each end. We'll open up this pack and get out the ball and the nut that's in there. Now you can see I've undersized drilled a hole, and I'm going to thread that right in so that it'll actually catch threads right in the plywood. Now what I'll do is I'll take a toothpick with some epoxy, pack the epoxy down into that little hole. When I put the plywood cover on, I'll put the plywood cover on, and the threads will be in epoxy and in the piece of plywood that goes on here. Now with this, after I get off of this, clean the table off and stuff, I'll put up that little chart that Mike Rogers made for the Ray rudder linkage, the dimensions. I took it out of hiding here. Again, if you make the dimensions any different than that, all it'll mean is the linkage won't be exactly what Mike and Barron and them are using, and you'll probably need a couple extra flights to get it dialed in. It's not a major thing. We're looking for a 10 square inch rudder area. That's one of the things that we'd like to have. We'd like to have the pivot point roughly in the same spot that we had Strega in, which was pretty much to Mike's dimensions. This way we know we're going to get the adjustment, well, let's hope, almost right on the first shot. We won't be just taking a stab in the dark. Now with this little plywood piece, this ball link, you can grab it. It's almost in solid epoxy after that epoxy kicked off. And I'm just dressing off the edge here. Once it's dressed off and I'm kind of happy with it, I get the old CA on there, wipe it off, harden it up, and then I want to go back to the original stab and make sure that I'm within all the clearance around before I put the hinge slots in. And basically we're going to copy all the dimensions right off Strega from last year, so we know we have this exactly the way it was on the other plane and give us a good starting point. Now I sighted down the elevators, made sure they were straight to begin with, so I didn't have to do any tweaks. I'm ready to lay out the hinges, get out the hinge, that little pocket tool, the new one that we made, and get some hinge slots in here. Now what I want to do here, step one, using the same hinge pocket tool that we used before, I want to lay out, and I can lay it out right off of, actually I can lay it off, I want to start with one space, so I can get this nice and even. I can measure right off the slot, because what I want to have is one slot, one space, one slot, one space, so that it matches the flaps, kind of like a shark's tooth look. Again, same as Strega. Oh, it works out even. Sometimes it does work out even, sometimes it doesn't. I'll tell you, this tool, when we were doing the flaps, took a little time and made the tooling right, and now putting the hinge pockets in is going to be a piece of cake. Now I'll also set up that Dremel tool with the slotter And because this is a flat tail, you won't even have to jig it up. I'll have to put a little shim under the back of the elevators. But the stab, you just lay right on the table, set the clearance, just like on the tape before this. And boy, those are two things. If there's only two things you get off of this whole set of videos, hey, that looks cool. You only get a few things off of the tape, and that's one of them. You've got your money's worth. Now I want to, and again, I'm just going to do this with my finger here, is mark the slots as a little guide, my center lines. Maintain a center line. Even though I don't really need this, the table sets the center line. It's just cheap insurance that I can look down and see that I'm not wandering off in some crazy direction. No, I don't know about you, but I really do like that, especially in conjunction with this tip shape, that sawtooth look. It looks real nice. Alright, I'm ready to cut the slots. Now I just got to carefully transpose So I'm actually using the elevator itself to transpose these numbers, the little slots where I'm going to grind slots for the hinges. And I got that tool. Just take it out of storage. It's in a bag with the screws and everything ready to go. In 5 minutes I'll be able to cut these, both of the slots. Now if you haven't seen how to set up this little gizmo, of course just check out the tape before this. This is all in detail. I won't go through this again. We get this all set up. Now what I do is just take a little test here, take a test reading. Again, I'll try to do this through the macro lens. It's a little difficult. And get my height, fine-tune my height. One of the ways you can know if you're really right on the money, take a piece of scrap, cut it to this thickness, run a trick hinge and turn it upside down, and if the slot is in exactly the same place, you know you've got center. This looks pretty close. Okay, I'm ready to put these slots in. Hey, again, if you haven't seen how this goes together, check out the video before this. Has a pretty detailed little dissertation on it, and I think it's really a worthwhile little thing that everybody should have. This is the best way I've found so far to get hinge pockets in, and it certainly justifies making up this little gizmo. Again, thanks to Bob Martens for the original idea. I really am impressed even this time. That thing is really worth its weight in gold. Anyway, we'll just get these flaps dry fit for tonight, and that's about all I'm going to be able to do tonight. Tomorrow we'll try to try to at least finish the first stab up, and then we'll do the other one off camera, I guess. Anyway, this is going together real nice, and every time I work on it I just get a little more psyched than the time before. Now I got a really nice letter the other day from Dennis Toth, who moved to Florida from here. And he's building a shop down in Florida, and he says, because I've been hanging around here on Monday night and whenever, he says, I've humiliated him into taking care of his shop, vacuuming up every night, using a scraper on the table. And he said he's really going to take his time. Oh, I got to put this away. He's going to take his time and build a nice shop, so I'm glad that inspired him. Anyway, I got to move this tool. That's another pain neck. If you, worth putting on a video, if you decide to make one of these gizmos, it's nice if you can make it in a part of the table where you don't bump into it. Now, I didn't think of that before, but I have to keep taking it on and off. I have to do the other tail either tomorrow or the next day. I have to finish that tail. Well, more to come. See you tomorrow, kiddies. Now this morning what I'm doing is I'm looking at Joe's drawing here. Joe had made up a drawing of how he'd like to do the little fillet in between here, because what we want to do, here's where the ray brother linkage is. I have to leave a little path for the rod that it's going to go out to here. So I want to make up the fillet, and because it's a flat tail it's relatively easy. I'll just make it oversized and then put the curve in it from the top and from the bottom while the elevators are in place. But I want to make this block up. This is just a piece of 1/8 inch sheet, grain going side to side. And I tack glued this in place. This is what it ultimately will look like. Again, there's a lot more work to do in this than just making the typical straight tail up, because we're trying to give it that, I don't know, that Spitfire look, I guess is the right word. Anyway, engineering this up piecemeal here, and of course then the thrill of the day is going to be that I have to do a whole nother tail. But you can see what this piece will do here too is I'll use this, I'll put a little block of wood in here to confine the horn also, so this will be a piece that holds that horn clip in place. I don't have to bother with that, all that the glue and everything back there, hardwood, anything. I can just use this piece of wood to butt up against there. So I hope this is going to, I'm going to make up the little pieces off camera here and just trial fit it and see what this is going to look like. Now what I'm looking for in particular here is the punkiest, softest block I possibly can find. Anything this far back in the plane you'd really like to have, you know, super punked out wood. And I think the easiest way is just to make this piece oversized and then sand it in, which is what I'm going to do. That's what's nice, I saved these little pieces so I have a rough idea. Actually, if I didn't put this leading edge cut in here, I could have just butt joined that up. That's a mistake. I should do next time, not put the curve. Cut this piece first. Don't put this taper in, and I could butt this piece right in and just slice it off. But see, this is what you learn from doing one. Now the next one I do will be bingo. Now the little block of wood, one of the good ways to get this notch in here real accurate is take some 320 paper and put it around a piece of 1/8 inch wire. And then just drew, let's see if we can get a little dry fit. We want to get this piece to actually be the piece that confines the horn. A little bit more and I'll have it. Let's see what this looks like up close. Hang loose, goose. And I'm just going to take a little more and a little more until this actually is a clip that holds that horn, confines the horn in place. Now one of the things when I put this block in here, this will hold the horn in place, of course. One of the other things, I'm tapering this back because the fuselage will taper back, so I don't have any wood actually inside the body. I don't need any wood. I can also, once I get this final hollowed out, I want to check that I have clearance for the ray brother linkage. This is the whole reason for doing this. We want to have clearance for the ray brother linkage. Now I can also just get, well, I can't get the taper on this yet because I want to get a center line on here, but I can set this clearance before I tack this in place. It's a nice way of doing this, by the way. And just tack it first. Because, boy, once you build a plane, to go to make these fillets after it's all built and the tail is in the body, forget it. Now I have a real nice fit. Should be a couple, maybe 10 thousandths, the thickness of 2 IBM cards there. This side is hollow, so I can hook on the ray rudder linkage. And I'll leave this hollow. When this is actually in the fuselage, this will be a little channel here that we can work our way in and get that linkage on. Now the next thing I have to make a little estimate, and I have to get these in neutral. I'll hold the little tip pieces and take a little reading off here. I know this is going to have to be angled back. I also want to get a center line on it this way, looking from the back. This is now, whoops. Take a little material off here, because I have to get that angle, and the elevators of course have an angle. And I have to do the same thing over here. And then what I'll do is I'll just block sand that angle in. It'll actually be easy to block sand it in. Now it's the easiest, now that I have the elevators off here, to just plot what shape this fillet is going to be after it's carved. And put a little ruler line down. This is where a little machinist ruler comes in real handy. Sounds like a lot of work to be doing right now, but boy, this will save a lot of time after the plane is assembled. We'll be ready to rock and roll when this tail goes in. And see, I've plotted with the elevator in place exactly how much of this is going to get sanded away. And what I also did, I ran a nice glue fillet right up in here to confine this. Of course, the fuse side will confine it too. And I'll just block sand away all this material and this material. Get that nice taper in there so that the fillet will follow the taper of the elevators. And when I put the elevators in, actually when this is installed in the body, this can just drop right in now. It'll be a big help. Of course, it's a flat tail. It'll just drop right on the fuse side. It'll be real nice this way. This will be a, believe me, good investment. Now this is a little tricky, and I want to make sure I'll sand a little bit, then I want to do a dry fit. I don't want to go too far. This is one of those little things. It's just a little time consuming, a little bit of patience. I got a call from Rich Peabody a few minutes ago. He's having some trouble with the sheeting lifting on his wing. If and when he gets here, I'll try to diagnose it for him. And hey, that's one of the things about these videos that's real good. Now, Rich seems as good as or better than an average guy at learning. And as he's learning, he's perfectly willing to share that information with everybody. I know he's trying to do some kind of nitrate finish on a foam wing, so when he gets here, we'll check it out. But never be afraid to share your experiences. It's your sharing the experiences that is going to, from time to time, maybe be a little embarrassing for all of us, including me. But somewhere down the road, you hope other people will benefit from your mistakes, and then they aren't so painful. Again, this is just a little, just take a little time here. Once these fillets are made, boy, I'll tell you, when you go to put the wing in the body, you put the wing, put the tail in, and it's so nice having this made. Now you can get the final little bit. Just block sand it in. Of course, you got to watch that the horn is confined here. Hold this up so I get it even. Now, when the elevators are in neutral, you want to have this, of course, perfectly flat on both sides. Once you get, and you want this joint to be perfectly flat. Once I get that, I can work over here, get the other elevator. And now I also, because of the ray rudder linkage, I have to make a little indentation into this sheeting, but I don't want it to come up through the top of the elevators, that's for sure. Now I'm trying to locate exactly where the spot is where this is going to Put a little indentation into the wood here. But even at that point, I'll have plenty of elevated travel. It's not a problem. I just don't want it coming out the top. You know, I know even after I add the linkage to that, I'll just have enough clearance. That'll just be fine. Now the final little step is we can true up with everything in place. Notice I put a soft pad down here so I don't googe this up. I can get the final so that the fillet, the elevator, and the stab all meet at exactly the same height. And I want to go right down the hinge line, of course. Any high spots there, any high spots here, just kill the high spots. Now I can't do the other side without letting the horn sit off the table. This way I should get really nice smooth airflow. What you really don't want to have is the stab and then boom up to the elevators or the stab down. You want to have that smooth airflow right over the whole surface. Takes a little extra time to get it. Seems like this whole plane is taking longer than normal, but hey, anything with curves always takes longer than, you know, the straight line stuff. And the last thing is to just dress off the whole trailing edge. We know we've got all the high spots out. Now one of the last things I want to do here before we move on to the next step, I want to take all of the edges now I know are very accurate. Everything that's an edge on this stab, especially an end grain edge which is very vulnerable, some thin CA, wipe it with a Q-tip or a paper towel. These edges are very vulnerable when you're sanding and grinding and everything else, especially the end grain edges, especially out in the back here. Hopefully protect it a little bit during the rest of the construction process. Make sure none gets down into that horn. Want to dress off the trailing edge a little bit. And if you do the sanding and dressing off on an ongoing basis, boy, I have found that to be the best of all worlds. When you wait till the end of building to sand and dress things off, it seems like you're always trying to skip things over and take shortcuts, and the wolf is waiting for you in the woods. And of course the nice thing now is, well, all I have to do is repeat every step from the last two videos over again, and I'll have the other tail done. But that's what working for the RAF involves. Working for the RAF is a tough life. Radius every edge, just a little bit. These are unusual shaped fillets, but I think they'll separate the plane, you know, much like any semi-scale plane. In a sea of planes with no canopy and painted on canopies and white with a red stripe, these will stand out. Let's hope they do. Okay, that looks like that one's ready to, you know, put in the bank, hopefully. What I want to do now, I hope I'll have the time to do it today, is, although we don't know how much time, and I don't know if Rich is going to show up, what I want to do is basically bring the other stab up to this position in life, and then I'll glass the middle of it. I'll do that. I'll wait till I get both of them done. See what happens, you have a stress riser right here. If this starts to crack, it tears like a phone book all the way down the middle, even though we don't have a joint. So I'm going to want to glass a little piece in here. And of course I want the stab to bend equally, and there is some flexing in every stab. So I'll do the same ellipse on the top. And I'll wait till I get both of the stabs and do them both at the same time. That'll be the easiest way to do it. Save some time that way. Okay, I got some of the work done on this tail here, and it's time for a break. This really takes time. It's amazing how long it takes to get these tails with all the curves and all these edges and hinge lines and everything. I'm going to be ready to do the horn and the hinge pocket soon, but it's time for one of those nice long coffee breaks. Now while I'm working on this other tail and I've got the horn already on, it dawned on me that I forgot what it boils down to. I forgot to put on all the detail for the ray rudder linkage. So what I'm going to do is, rather than waste another 10 or 15 minutes here doing it, I have a real good dissertation on the ray rudder and some of the examples on one of the old videos. Now, as I said before, in other videos I've gone into detail on this. I'm just going to skim through this real quick for anybody who doesn't want to go back and search through 40, 50 videos to try to find where that is. Anyway, the purpose of a ray rudder is on all inside maneuvers and all outside maneuvers. On an outside maneuver, the airplane wants to corkscrew in at you. On an inside maneuver, it wants to corkscrew away from you. Now, what this is, it tries to counteract some of these forces. I think it was, I give the credit at least to Al Rabe for developing it, inventing it, however you want to say it. But now what happens is, say on a 35 ship or a 40 ship, little small ships under 40 ounces, this effect is small. On larger ships, tune pipe ships, actually it gets more important the bigger the diameter of the prop is. The larger prop that you're using, the more accentuated this effect becomes. And the ray rudder, I have built, I really, confession is good for the soul. I built many planes, and I tried to explain to Jim, I just don't like doing the ray rudder. It's a pain in the neck, all the hinges and linkages, And then we'd get out to the field to fly them, and I'd say, oh, why didn't I put the ray rudder on it? In fact, Joe Adamusco has one of those planes right now that really needs a retrofit on a rudder. Put it on when you're building a plane. It's a lot easier. If you don't like it, you can always disconnect it. It allows you to counteract that force and get the plane to trim a lot cleaner and neater and more efficiently. Anyway, one of the things that you need to do is on your elevators, when you make up the elevator, the outside elevator, and I'll just assume this is an 1/8 inch horn here, right here is where you need to hook the linkage. It needs to go as high as it can into the horn and back maybe a maximum, and I'll just make this 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch back from the actual pivot point. And this is not super critical because you have the adjustment in the horn that makes up for it. But it is critical that you get it up as close to the horn as possible. Now, the way I've done that in the past, and again, this is documented on some of the other videos, is I've sheeted the hole, especially a foam elevator, and then gone in and cut a trough in it, taken that linkage that has the threaded rod on the end, the RC thing with the clevis, and I've measured out. First you have to know where this rudder pivot point is going to be, and make that the average point in the middle of the threads. Put the clevis on and engineer this all up so that the length is right. Then this end of the rod here, I would put a little piece of brass tubing on it, solder some wire or washer or something so that this can pivot, and take this, make a little well for this so this doesn't get hung up in glue. Glue this in, sheet and fiberglass over it, so that now on the bottom, you'll never even see this coming out the bottom, but this rod will now run out the back, and this will have the adjustment where the linkage comes in, so that you know here's the pivot point of the horn. So the dimensions you need to calculate out ahead of time off the plans are this to here, and the way I do that is lay out the elevator onto the plan, exactly where the tail moment, or on the fuse itself. Calculate in the 3/8 of an inch or 1/4 inch. Lay out the middle of this rod, move the clevis to the middle of its adjustment, and then find this point, and then push the rod this way and put the bend in it. And what that'll do, that'll get you in the ballpark. You won't wind up with a solder joint back here. But even if you do, the solder joint is okay. It's not a big giant problem. Now, on this end of it, we just made that little plywood horn, and I'd say put 3 or 4 or 5. The closest one being about a 1/4 inch, maybe out to somewhere around a 1/2 inch, and you'll have plenty of adjustment there. When you make the fillet, if this ship will not have a fillet in the back, but when you make a ship that has fillets in the back, what you need to do is make what amounts to be a half a fillet. It looks like that, so that the linkage can ride in here and run out the back, and then you're only going to really have from the top view you'll have a fillet, but in the bottom you'll have no fillet. Again, I've retrofitted about, if I look back at the videos, at least 5 or 6 ships. They're all on video, retrofitting them, putting the hinges in, all of the other things that need to be done. That stuff is available on video. It's not a big deal. I won't go into that now, but if you set your ship up this way and engineer this all out, you will have one extra trim feature, and maybe your competition won't have that trim feature. And maybe that'll just allow you to have that little edge in flying that you'll have. There's a little look at that half fillet off of the tweener here. I don't know if you're getting a good focus on this. Again, just a little look at the linkage here, the clevis end, how it goes into a half a fillet. I don't know if you can really see that, if you can get in there. It's a half a fillet, how it attaches to the bottom of the elevator. Down here you have tradition, the same kind of thing. This was a retrofit. This was a retrofit. We did this on video, if I remember right. By the way, this is a good idea. If you have taped hinge lines, throw a little Kleenex in the fillet here. It keeps the hinges in neutral. It doesn't let the tape stay in any one position for a long time. And of course, the Red Baron has a Rabe rudder. The Griffin has a Rabe rudder. All of the ships have a Rabe rudder here, except for the Sidewinder, and we don't really plan on flying the Sidewinder to any degree in the future. So, my suggestion: if you've never done a Rabe rudder before, do it. Think about it. Retrofit it. Try it. I think you'll really be impressed with how well it works. Now, the purpose of looking back at that video, and I thought this would be a pretty convenient way of doing it. That was the video we did on Tsunami. Now, I want to go through some of the other tapes. I have the more current information. So what you can see is that each year we've developed it and developed it and developed it just a little bit, fine-tuned it, whatever you want to call it. And what I'm trying to simulate here is to get the setting right off of Strega of the 10 square inch rudder area. We're looking for about 10 square inches, give or take an inch, and the same linkage setup. And I think I have that on one of the other tapes. I'm going to look through the tapes, see if I can find it. And what you can do by doing this, you don't have to go back yourself and look through 3 or 4 tapes, but you can see that each year the system that we use gets a little more sophisticated, a little better, a little more reliable. And each year I'd like to improve it a little bit. So by looking back and forth at this, you can see.
You got to figure out a way to get some, I think, epoxy in there.
Yes, you got to get it. Now I want to show.
Not a whole lot, because this is the inboard side of the wing. Right?
Yeah, you don't need much.
And
what Rich has here, I'll show this on the macros. What Rich has is a bubble in the foam sheeting. There aren't many people that have built foam wings year after year and not had this happen. My feeling is, and I'm trying to look in there, but I can't peel the sheeting up enough. If we could look at the bottom of this and see if there's any epoxy in there. All right, the problem is simple. Yeah, look, you can see yourself. You've got no glue holding the foam down.
I'm pretty sure that I was trying to be light with.
Yeah.
Glue.
Yeah.
And
But Leah, look inside, Rich. Look, you can pry this open with an X-Acto knife. Let me do this. I can show this on the macro lens. It's not going to hurt. This will be a perfect repair, by the way. You'll never see this again. Look in there and see what you see. There's no glue holding the sheeting on. If I look up at the sheeting, there's no foam on the wood.
That's what I feared was the.
Yeah. Well, we could fix that. All right, this is Rich's wing, and Rich is trying to make some strides getting what we did. We just slid it with an X-Acto knife. You can see there's no epoxy holding that down. Now, he's got the right idea trying to make it light, but obviously this is one spot where he either made it too thin, too light, or whatever. So the cure here is real easy. This is going to be a simple repair. We'll heat up some epoxy till it's like water. Paint it in on both sides. Make sure it gets in. Take an IBM card or a razor, shove it in both ways. Push it down, wipe it with alcohol, and put something over that with wax paper or whatever until it cures back up. And I'll bet you in an hour that'll be a perfect repair. No. Mike Rogers had this happen many times. I've seen this a lot of times.
The thing is, don't you have a cup?
I don't want a cup.
You can't heat this by the foam. You'll
I'm not
going
to heat it by the cup. Trust me.
Well, I just want to
Trust me.
remind you. I'm not,
Trust me.
you know.
I'm going to show you a magic trick.
Sabatino one time gets over to the house and starts...
No, you don't want to put heat by the foam. That's one. We're using the epoxy where one part is bigger than the other, so we have a little working time. Mix this up, have a ball. You don't want to use the equal. You don't want to use the stuff that Scotty uses, that equal part stuff, because it takes too long to dry. It won't thin out like this will. All right, now watch how we do this, because this will be really, really good if you can figure this out. When you mix this stuff, it's got to look pearly white. You can't mix it and just put it on. Mix it till it turns into like soapy, pearly white stuff. I'm going to do some glass work later on a Spitfire. So, all right, take a piece of paper.
I'm going to cut that.
For lack of a better way to do this, heat both sides. Okay, let me get the hairdryer. Get the hairdryer out of the back shop there. And put this up close. Don't put it on high heat. Leave it on low heat. And just get what's on the card here wet enough. You see, it doesn't take but a second or two, and it's water. The low heat setting is the best.
It changes its look.
If you see a bubble, you've gone too far. As soon as you see a bubble, you know, you want to back off and let it cool for a second. A bubble is not a good idea. There you go. You're just starting to see bubbles coming in there now. Okay. All right, let's shove it right under there. Now, you can feel with the card. Okay, do this yourself. Feel with the card.
I understand what you're doing.
All right, now, because we may be able to feel with, see, this isn't stuck down well way back here. We can get some epoxy in there, but here it's stuck fine. Oh, no, it's right up here. It's disappearing back into being solid. Give me a little more heat. Let me get a better angle here. Put the heat right up here so I can get it right under there.
I'm out the wing, Len.
You're not even near the wing. I'll put my hand here. You can't even feel it. If you do this without heating the epoxy, you wind up putting too much in there. Right. It's not necessary. Now, you're not building a bridge here. Okay. Okay, you can feel it. That epoxy's working its way down in there. And you can feel how far. You just have a place where the epoxy is real thin.
Just what I outlined there. I think
okay, yeah.
Close.
No, back here you're missing. See how far back it's going into the wing here?
Right. Well, I know that.
But we can correct that right now.
It's not going past there.
Okay, now you can pop this down and go this way. Now this is pretty good on this side. Actually, most of it is toward the trailing edge. But let's get some more epoxy down in there. Heat that up for me. Obviously, the nice idea here is if you really were super fussy, you could be doing this even after the plane was finished, you know, and put an incline there or a star or a... Okay, that's good.
Well,
let's get it right under there.
Try to fix it before it...
Yeah, no, you got the right idea. This is, and when you get this up into some filler coat, bring it over here, and if this starts to bubble up, you can do this right up to the point. There's actually no point you can't do this at. This is an excellent repair. We'll put this on a repair video. Okay, we're getting right up to there. Right up there. Now the trick is you got to get the extra epoxy to sink back down. And don't worry about it being messy. That's not a factor. You got plenty of work time. Not a factor at all. This is all nitrate dope now. Okay, we can get rid of this. Take the old trowel. Okay. Now, it's actually good you did this on a day it's raining because it's humid. The wood is expanded as far as it's going to go. On a dry day, let me get a paper towel. Give me the alcohol right there.
That?
No. Where the hell is it? There it is. Just hold that from falling over. Now, when this dries, we'll put a swipe of that green, that your 3M stuff in there.
I think the seam can be.
Why are
sealed.
these lines on this sheeting? Why
Because
are
I don't see well when.
Oh, okay. That was so you could see the glue edge when you laid the glue down. I would just be afraid that would come through like a white paint.
It hasn't so far.
Okay. Now we want to get something on here to hold this down. But you could feel the epoxy's even holding that.
Right.
You could feel it. That's going to happen.
Now I think if I just sit and rub this for
I think if you sit here and babysit it, and every about 2 minutes, just give it one of these, you're better off than if we put weight on, because if you put weight, it may bow down.
And I think that to do this seam, I'll put white glue in there because it won't.
It'll be sealed by then.
Yeah.
The green stuff is better. And, and run a 1-inch piece of tissue over that so it doesn't tend to crack.
Right.
If you just do this, I'll work on this end of the table because I'm working on that tail.
That's all right. I'll just do it.
Yeah, no, this, you could feel that it's down. That sucker's down, man. That's a perfect repair.
I'm willing to just sit here.
Yeah, just baby. Yeah, no, that stuff's going to kick off in 15, 20 minutes. Just sit here by the time...
well, if I keep it warm, it'll keep it thin.
Yeah. Couple of things not to do here. Don't sit here with a hairdryer. You'll melt the foam. Don't get anything with lacquer thinners near the foam. I don't know yes or no about using that C8. It's supposed to not attack foam. But I know that 2-part epoxy on foam is real nice. It'll also, when you go to sand that seam out, there'll be a seam there. The epoxy where 1 part is twice as big as the other sands beautifully. If you did this with some kind of glue that didn't sand, bing, ding, 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 and you'd have a problem. You want to finish that seam off. Obviously, you could hit it with this later on, or just extra filler, maybe a strip of tissue, and that would be a good repair. Real good.
Tell them how to get cat hair out of the thing, man. You don't have that problem anymore.
I don't have cat hair, no. Cat is not with us anymore. This is, by the way, this is excellent technology here, where you lap the seam over so you have double tissue in the middle. That's excellent.
These are the ellipses, too.
You put glass ellipses.
There's 2-inch, and then an ellipse, and then another bigger ellipse.
Right, always put the ellipses first and the strip down the middle last. I got to do glass in this afternoon.
I did it the other way around. But
well, it just seems like it's easier to sand it out when you don't have to go up over the step.
yeah, except if you're building a built-up airplane, well, you don't have to sand it out anyhow.
Now, as always happens, as we're getting the shop filling up with people here, so I'm basically not going to be able to finish this as I thought I would right now. I'm not going to be able to do the rest of the Ray Rudder stuff, which I got marked out, and I'll put that on later on. Wanted to just remind everybody what a great little thing this was. I showed that to Rich, and he jumped out of his bloomers. Anyway, his repair came out real nice. It's about as nice as you can expect. And that's a thing that's happened to everybody I've ever known that's built foam wings. That's just one little thing you can put right in the bank. You can steal it right off the videos. It's a great idea. Now I want to just put this little diagram here from the Ray Rudder. This would be looking at it from the outside of the circle. This is the most current information that I have. This horn should be either a large Dubrow, or in my case I make my own horn. I make it out of 5 or 6 laminates of 64th plywood with as many holes as possible, but from this hole to the center line of the rudder should be 1 1/4. That's what you should be looking for in this case. The rudder should be, and these are things that have evolved, 10 square inches. That seems to work out real well. And the ball link here should be as close to the horn as, this is probably on the other tape too, as close as you can get it to the horn, and between 1/4 inch and 3/8 back. That seems to cover all of the little variables that go into this, and we've been real lucky. This is the setup we used on Strega. That was kind of a set it and forget it. Had very good, in other words, what I'm saying, very good adjustment. If I put 1 too many turns into the, over here, I'd have the adjustment go in 1 click. what would happen, I could see the extra yaw in places at the top of the maneuvers. If I went back the other way, it would get soft. So I had maybe 3 turns of adjustment, and I could pick from how I had the plane trimmed where I wanted it. This is real good numbers. This will get you in a ballpark every time. Now the last thing I want to do today, I want to glass these up. I always glass the center section because what happens is the load going this way and the load going this way. When these elevators are up, this is like a piece of angle iron, and there's a stress riser right in here. So I'm going to get the 0.75 ounce glass cloth for this. There's no joint in the foam, so I probably can get away with doing 1 layer of glass. First thing I want to do is get that sanded where I'm going to glass it nice and smooth with 320. Now I want to be able to have this sitting up in the air while I'm glassing it. I'm trying to figure a way of jigging this up reasonably. I guess this is as close to being good as we're going to get it. So what I'll do is make myself a couple pieces of tape here just to hold these in place. The chaos in the shop is done, hopefully, for the day. By the way, that worked out well for Rich Peabody. And get to work on my own plane a little bit here. I'd like to get the glass on today, let it dry tonight, and obviously tomorrow will be looking good. We can weigh the stabs and go on to the next step. All this does is hold it up off the table so that while I'm doing the second part, I'll do this part first, flip it over, and do this part. Now, I sanded this perfectly smooth. I'm going to go get the cloth. The cloth is 0.75 ounce. Now, first thing I want to do is make a little, well, I wish we could afford some new pens here. Get a little idea of exactly where I want this glass to go. Keep in mind that while the elevators are pointing straight up, what happens is all the flex in the tail is gone, and it all winds up right here, right where those elevators bend. So we'll even put an extra little piece in here. In fact, let me put an extra little scrap. Now, what I want to do is I'll take the cloth, lay this out here. I want the grain to go Xing. I don't want to have it, and I know it's hard to cut the cloth that way, but I want the cloth, I don't want grain going this way and grain this way. This grain is doing nothing. I want it all on an X. That's by far the best way to do this. Well, what I have is my old reliable I'm out of ink pen. And you can see with the grain of the cloth on an X, you really need a pair of sharp scissors, and my wife doesn't let me use her good scissors, so I have to use these junky things. Anyway, another way is you can cut this over newspaper with a brand new razor blade, whichever way is the most convenient. Cut it a little bit oversized. And of course, since I have to do 2 tails, I'll cut 4 of these pieces all at once. I just wanted to show this technique of cutting over newspaper. This is a scalpel blade that Midgley gave me. A brand new razor, double edge will work fine. Cut right over the newspaper and cut right into the paper. Don't be a wimp, press right down. If your wife, like Karen, if your wife won't let you have the good scissors, Now remember, when you make these patterns, to make them, get the grain on at 45 degree to maximize the amount of strength you have. What I do, I'm just replicating this over and over again. If you have a choice, don't use red ink. Red ink comes through to white paint sometimes, even though this plane will be camouflage. Little black dots seem to be the best. Again, this is a really good thing. I know people have trouble with fiberglass. The only trouble I have is trying to find the good scissors. She hides them up in the bathroom. Fiskars, by the way, are the best scissors for this. If you can scare up some Fiskars. Good tip, like everything we do here. Everything's a good tip. Don't play the horses. Now, any glassing you do, we just used this on Rich's wing, by the way. Any glassing you do, you want to use the epoxy, where one tube is twice as big as the other. This sands like butter after 48 hours, and it remains just flexible enough it doesn't get brittle and crack like fiberglass resin does. This is much better for what we're using it for. Now, I don't want to mix more than I can use on one tail at one time. You don't need tons of this. If you need to mix a little more, it's not a problem. And believe me, I have experimented with every kind of gel coat and resin I could ever think of. This is the best material to use. No second choice. We just did that little repair on Rich's wing today, and boy, that worked out well. You want to mix this up till it's like a pearly white. And you want to try to let it dry an extra day. You could sand it after 24 hours, but if you sand this glass work, and everybody wants to be able to do nice glass work, glassing the nose, the wheel spats, there's a lot of areas on a plane that are very appropriate for glassing. And you look at Strega over there, and there's no dents, no cracks, and one of the reasons is all of the areas that take a lot of abuse have been glassed, so I give myself full credit. Anyway, we'll get on with this. I want to do this side first because this goes up at kind of a little funky angle. You always want to have a can handy so you can spread whatever you don't use. Go a little bit past the area that you want to glass, some amount. These are the little SIG spreaders or the Body Shop spreaders, whichever you're more comfortable with. Remember, the main load is right off of the horn. Where the horn ends, out maybe an inch. That's where most of the load is being generated on this. Another thing good about this, because we launched the plane with a stooge right from the leading edge. Everybody's seen that stooge deal that I have. It hardens that up, and also where people are launching planes, and we have some real clumsy people around Flushing and circle burners. Won't mention any names, but they can really be clumsy at times. Now remember, the grain is on a 45-degree angle, so what I'm doing is a sunburst. Start at the middle, and normally I would have a rag or a towel or something over the stab, but because it's sitting up in midair here, I just can't do that. Okay. I want low heat, not high heat. If you see bubbles, you know you've gotten it too hot. Want to get some of this off the spreader. It'll wet right out. You want to spread it just past. Go at least an inch beyond where the glass ends, where the cloth ends. Now I want to take a little paper towel. It's not really necessary to work this fast. Because I have two tails to do, I want to get this project moving. Now where the epoxy ends here, you want to just go a little bit past it. Of course, all you're doing here is saving yourself some sanding later on. Get the edges nice. Whatever hangs off the front we don't care about right now. And we're all done. There'll be almost no sanding at all there. That'll just be an automatic. All right, I'll do the rest of them. Flip it over, of course, do the other one off camera. Now, just one final thing I wanted to show is in the middle here, I got a postage stamp size piece of extra cloth because I don't want that crack to work its way forward. Beef that up a little bit. In fact, I'll wipe this one more time. There'll be almost no sanding. This will probably be 2 minutes of sanding to get this to perfect. Now, of course, I have another one to do, so let me do that one off camera rather than tie up more time on the tape. Okay, the glass work is cooking. We'll let that dry overnight. We'll pick this up tomorrow. Now, what I have here today is, I got these in the mail from Frank McMillan today. Frank McMillan, of course, is one of the people, along with Al Rabe, that have built, and of course other people, Keith Drossel and whoever, I don't want to leave anybody out, that have built some really awesome, truly semi-scale planes. Now, needless to say, none of my planes really fit into the same class as Al Rabe or Frank McMillan or any of them. They're not really, truly semi-scale. They're kind of semi-scale. They just want to have the flavor. But anyway, Frank McMillan, I'm just going to lay this out here. Frank McMillan graciously sent me these and a book that I'm going to put on the video right after this. One of the things, these are aluminum screws. And Frank said by replacing all the screws on his plane, he was able to save about 10 grams, which is just under a half an ounce. Well, that's a great idea, and I'm going to try to get some screws from Frank. I had some aluminum screws at one time, and of course they worked well, but it's difficult to find them commercially. So if anybody out there knows of a source, I know Frank McMillan is a source. I'll try to find a source where he's getting them. I'm going to write him a letter today. And possibly we could make them available to more people. And if you want more information, of course, give Frank McMillan, jot him down a little letter or give him a call. I'm sure he'd love to hear from you. Definitely one of the nicest guys in the world to stun, and definitely one of the most creative semi-scale builders, period. Now, this is a book that Frank sent in, and of course other people have sent a lot of stuff, including John Pothier has told me that he's going to be sending some stuff in here that we can check out for our own reference. The name of the book is Spitfires. Anyway, one of the things that I'm trying to accumulate here, and purpose of it is to get everything on the video so that we can share this with as many people as possible. Obviously, if you own this book, it's almost impossible to pass it around to 30, 40, 50 people in the country, but if it's on video and you can make copies relatively quick and cheap, you pretty much could share it with hundreds of people without a problem. This is a book that I'm going to be reading in the next couple of days, and of course I'll return it to Frank. It is a lovely book. It's excellent, and I just want to go real quick through this. I want to especially show this to Joe Adamusco. This is a custom Spitfire, and there's a color picture at the end of this. This is the kind of material that just, I don't even know how to say this. I could sit for hours and hours. It's full of details. It's full of little rebuilding of the fuselages, the fuselage jigs, the kind of things that, I don't know, little stories, and I just read some of the stories in here about people that have rebuilt or are rebuilding Spitfires. And I'll tell you, if you like Spitfires, I like all planes. My father liked all planes when he was alive. I guess it's in the blood, in the gene pool or whatever. But I just can't imagine somebody reading this book and not wanting to run out and build a Spitfire. And what happens is you find out that the group of people that's restoring and maintaining Spitfires is a lot like the modeling group in the fact that they have a mailing list and they all keep in touch with each other and they exchange parts and services, and there's some funny stories in here. This is a very interesting book. And one of the things I've been looking at is the little nose arts. I'm trying to come up with something cute that we can use on our model. The nose arts would be one of the appropriate things. Also the lettering schemes that they're coded into. This was an interesting part that I wasn't aware of before. Notice another thing on Spitfires. There are of course 26 variants of the Spitfire. Almost every one has a little bit of a different unique rudder shape. Here's just one thing I want to mention right now. My friend, and I'll put a little bit of this on the tape later, my friend John Pothier has been redoing my catalog for me and coming up with all kind of logos and just beautiful artwork. One of the things, Thomas Mann had helped me in the past, and John Pothier, between the both of them, I have a beautiful catalog I would otherwise not be able to have. He's going to search out through his library some Spitfire material to use on the catalog and on the advertisements for the videos. And we've certainly reached a point with sales on Spitfire videos that we're going to try to make some nice logo in the catalog. It's certainly becoming a very popular thing with the people watching the tape. So anybody out there has some ideas, hey, send them in. Look at this Spitfire Specialist. I love it. This is the kind of thing you would never know if you didn't read this book. There's just groups of people that rebuild, manufacture parts, cowling, spinners, all kinds of cool stuff. If you didn't have the book, you'd never know. In fact, look at if you can read this. I don't know if you can read it. Here's what they manufacture: cowlings, flaps, ailerons, rudders, wingtips, elevators, fillet fairings, tailplanes. It's unbelievable. Now, much like the people in the world of model planes, this gentleman here that was restoring a Spitfire wound up, he couldn't find a suitable substitute. He wound up making all the parts for a Spitfire spinner, and I thought this was unbelievable. All these parts manufactured to new specifications. There's over 400 parts in a Spitfire spinner. It's unbelievable. Again, you're either interested in this or you're not. If you're just interested in flying, Fox 35 Ringmasters, that's cool. But if you get into this, and if you get into the research of doing a special model like this is the little stuff that separates this from building, an ordinary airplane and one that at least makes some attempt at being semi-scale. Nice logo here. Check the logo out. Now check this out. This is pretty funny. With the they have these in Vogt Field. On our trip out west, we found a bunch of Sabre jets and MiGs and everything that were up on, I guess, the stands when you were a kid and built plastic models. They had these stands, but these are real airplanes. This is a real Spit. I'd like to find out where where I can get one of these for my backyard. Now, I know you probably won't believe this when I tell you, but this group of people that's restoring a Spitfire get together every Monday night and work on a Spitfire. I wonder if they eat pizza. Again, some of the unique things. Check out the lettering codes, some of the different paint jobs with the roundels, and especially the paint jobs. We're looking for fancy paint jobs always. Now, one of the specialty repair places here that does repair work. Look at a picture of the cockpit here. This will be handy. We go to make a cockpit. It's unbelievable. It's like, Tom Lay and Big Jim and everything, but of course they're Spitfire people instead of whatever we are, cottage industries. Now, it's interesting to note, this is the jig that they use to make a Spitfire fuselage in and maintain the integrity. Interesting to note how some of these things, and notice look over here, the fabric and the paint, doing some fabric work and paint work, and still using butyrate dope. Believe it or not, they haven't gone away from butyrate dope. And one of the things, look at the rudder shape. Looks like a Lampione United. Maybe that's where Lampione stole his rudder from. Interesting thing. I'm looking at the wheels here, and there's probably somebody that could make or should make or will make some kind of semi-scale wheels somewhere down the road. Looking at the different way the exhaust pipes come out on some of the different engine installations. It's one of the things Joe has been working on. I don't know if he's made any progress, and the radiator scoops. We were thinking about having detachable radiator scoops, but of course, more on that later. Again, what I'm just impressed with is how many people are still working on. Look at all these advertisements of people that are making parts for Spitfires. I mean, you could almost buy a new Spitfire here in parts. This is one of the later ones with the 5-bladed prop and a giant pointy spinner. That is awesome. I know it says the Rolls Royce in there too. I know Joe just goes wild when he sees stuff like this. Again, a totally different rudder shape here, different model. The rounded rudder. Some of them have the turtle deck, some of the models have a bubble canopy, some have the Malcolm hood. This we're going to try to incorporate in on a real model when we do the fuselage. I haven't figured exactly how I'm going to incorporate that in, but we'll be trying, that's for sure. Again, always looking for ideas. Frank, I have to tell you, I really love this book. I feel like keeping it. In fact, what I've been thinking is, what the hell, Frank lives in Texas. He's not going to buy an airline ticket to come up here and get his book. Maybe I'll just keep it. Nice guy. Look at this. Look at the cannons, the radiator detail, and that scoop under there. Here's a nice logo. I hope John Pothier, when he looks at this video, he can check this logo out. That's nice. I like that. Maybe we can get that on a cover of the catalog somehow. Now look at how big. These radiators look totally different than the ones on the early models. This is a clip wing, by the way. Some of the Spits had the clipped wings. The prop, unbelievable. The exhaust. Look at the size of that spinner. Unbelievable. You know that's not a true turn spinner either. And this scoop looks further back now. So just a lot of things. Being we're doing a fantasy airplane, you know, we have a lot of choices here. I'm going to be speaking with Frank McMillan a lot more as we go along in the project. Look at the rudder shape on this one, totally different rudder. Flaps down. I was happy to find out they're still using butyrate dope. That's amazing. But you know, so are we. And we're going to use butyrate dope on this model. Hey, pretty cool. Now, just some of the details worth looking at here. Now, look at a little scoop here, the scoop on the side. Now, one of the things a real Spitfire, and I'm not gonna try to do this, is it goes from being a spinner to kind of a blunt, and this is because of the valve covers on the engine. But that's one of the semi-scale things I'm going to be trying to eliminate, is try to get this to smooth into the spinner. Basically, because we're not making a total scale model. I've been looking at all the canopy options, and that's one of the things. This is called a Malcolm hood. One of the things we're going to be trying to do is get a real custom canopy on here. I hope Midgley can help me with that part of the project. I just want to thank, really, let me see, personally thank Frank McMillan for the loan of this book. Absolutely unbelievable. I'm sure as time goes on, this was announced in Stunt News, and 3 days later I got the book. One of the things I want to mention, and you know, this is, you look at this catalog, John Pothier has been working on his catalog for me endlessly. Thomas Mann has made some contributions. Upgrading it, Mike Haravich has made some contributions. People with computer skills have really, Dave Midgley runs the labels for me. And what you find out is, and I'm just looking at some of this stuff, this is a page that Thomas Mann made up. One of the things you find out that you should get from this hobby, by the way, this is for the new plans that are coming out, a lot of nice new stuff. One of the things that I personally get out of the hobby, and I hope I could pass this on, you know, hey, let's get real. I can pass on a lot of information, how to finish planes, and maybe how to do other stuff, who knows what. But there's a part of this hobby that if you're not enjoying it, you're really missing something, and that's developing a network of friends that share the same activities, the same whatever you want to call it, pornography or whatever it is that we do here. And I really appreciate the fact that people send me things. I always try to return it. I always try to pay back in spades. And if you want to join that list of people, obviously be my guest. I really, really think that one of the things everybody that builds model planes could get out of it to the max is sharing the things that they know. Like, example, this book. Well, if Frank bought this book, I've never seen the book, and he took it, read it, boom, put it on a shelf and forgot about it. Well, yeah, that's nice, and he would have enjoyed it, but you know what? Through the video, I'll bet you 60, 80 people will have seen this book by the end of the month. Well, that's the whole point, to appreciate things that are gone but not forgotten, whether it's old cars or old airplanes. You need to have some way of sharing it, and these videos are a great way. I know you can pick up things on how to build. You can pick up just the fun we have having pizza here or being part of my circle of friends. And I feel very fortunate to know people like George Ventrini, John DeTavio, Jim Damarel, John Pothier, Thomas Mann, Mike, endless, Midgley, whoever. Everybody puts a piece into the puzzle, and the puzzle is my involvement in the hobby. And I enjoy that so much. I enjoy that more than all these concourse awards or fifth place awards at the Nats or whatever. Winning contests is great, but having friends and having a network of friends that they all share the information, share the videos, share the books, share everything, is an unbelievable aspect of this hobby, and I have not found that in motorcycle racing, boat racing, other endeavors that I've been involved in. It's almost a unique thing to our hobby, how involved we all are. So my sermon of the day, and before we get started on whoever's coming to the shop today, is thank you to everybody that's contributed to this. If you would like to become part of this puzzle, and I don't take any credit for the puzzle, I only say that I'm a piece of it. My part is to collect information, put it into one bite-sized group, and spread it out into the universe. And I think I've done that very well. To all the people that have contributed, obviously I could not make that contribution without people like Frank McMillan sending screws in, and people sending ideas in, and John Pothier making the catalogs, and Thomas Mann sending me things, and just the endless supply of people that form that nucleus that make this all possible. And I really hope you share in this adventure. We're going to be getting into the finishing of the wing and the tissue and the tail and the weighing things and and that's all fine. The mechanics of this hobby are fine. But boy, the social part of this hobby, if you miss it, you're missing a truly unique thing. And I really hope you share it with us. High as you can get. There you go. Bullshit. DK.
One, 2 notes above it.
So just screw that up. They get that one nailed. They get the... Hey, we made a couple of improvements. That's why I figured I'd show this. The improvements are that we have little triangles holding the leading edge up now. We're going to lay that... Of course, we built stunt wings. This is called the box method, and I've done this. I even have it on video doing this for if anybody likes building this way. Very easy, very convenient, and ultra quick. In 20 minutes, we get the wing framed out. Drop the top spar in, George. And then what we're going to do is get a big sanding block and sand these ribs. That's going to be the next step here. So maybe you can pick up some ideas for building this way. This is a big RC model, big Tsunami, and it's a very nice, neat, quick way to build. And it works on stunt ships just as well. Hi, John DeTavio stopped by the shop here, and of course John is always looking for some way to save money. So.
And weight.
And yeah, okay. So let's see what this is now. Tell me about it. This is some new invention.
This is a double stick.
What do they use this for in carpet work? John?
Commercial jobs.
Commercial jobs. Okay.
For any place they have to stick 2 items together.
Okay.
Now that's how thin it is. It's very, very thin.
Touch it, yeah. Did you check to see if it's fuel proof?
I haven't checked anything yet. That's why I brought it down.
Okay.
We brought it down here so we can experiment with
Yeah.
it. But I thought it'd be a great item.
I wonder if you can hold to a foam wing, hold sheeting.
Oh my God, forget it.
Yeah, I see. It's pretty sticky stuff.
Oh man, cut it off, George.
Always experimenting here. Okay.
It'd be great for a center section of the wings. Look how thin it is.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah. Yeah, you really can't. Oh, you can't even get your finger off it. That's good stuff. Maybe when Jeff comes here, we could tape his wig on with that.
Oh my God! Here, now
You pull his head
now,
off. But
normally you should wait about 4 hours, but you try taking it apart.
now, do you put heat on that, or?
Nothing. That's it. That's it.
You know what the RC guys do? Salvo in them. They put on the foam skins on a foam wing with some kind of tape like that. Some
Well,
dog.
well,
Maybe that's the tape. I don't
and
even
it has
know.
no weight.
Yeah.
It has no weight at all. Cut
Yeah.
a piece off, sir. It has absolutely no weight at all. The
Wow.
thing is light as a feather.
It sounds undercut too.
Yeah, it's hard to cut.
Yeah, well, it's probably some kind of vinyl stuff.
Yeah,
Amazing.
So it's
Will you leave a roll of that with me? I'll figure something to do with
okay.
it.
Well, I already going to use it in my center section.
Yeah, well, let's give it a
forget
try. We took that Jim, that sticky back paper, made up a nice sanding block out of a pretty straight 1-inch top block. Now the edge where the sandpaper ends, you got to radius it off, or else it's going to catch on there. Just dress that edge off. That's the only one. The other one's okay.
I'll have to get I'll have to get all the things that you need for this.
Okay, I only want to go front to back now until these things are flat. And then we'll see how much the spar sticks up. You can almost get to the front of the wing here. Okay, have fun. Don't go side to side or you bust the damn thing up. You like that, John? Hey,
Yeah,
he's a
yeah,
famous
that's
guy.
great. Hey, heat improves the stickiness of it.
Okay, John is playing with his material there.
Now, I want to check alcohol on it and see what alcohol does to it.
Take some fuel. We got fuel over there.
Yeah, all right, we'll put the fuel on it.
Just go front to back, front to back. Now, supposing this was a stunt wing, it wouldn't matter. The best material to have is chalk, kids' chalk. And just sand until none of them have chalk on them. Radiusing off that sanding block is an important thing, though. You're starting to get it, right, John?
Now we got it. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, it takes all the wows out of it.
All right, yeah. Yeah, because you want the skins to sit nice. Now, one of the immediate uses for that stuff that John brought over was we put some new sandpaper on the block. And that stuff holds sandpaper down like dynamite. We use the thin block now to get right up to the leading edge. Now you got to get that flat spot out of there, John. You got a little bit.
I got to get down, yeah.
Yeah, just get rid of that little flat spot.
Okay.
The Polish sanding team in action. Yeah. Oh, man. Yeah, just if you put one pin by each rib, you can see where we have the ribs marked. Just put one pin to hold it in, make sure we have a nice tight seam, and we'll start gluing it down. Vacuum some of the dust up here. Just try, you can pull the pins out too, John. Yeah, all right. Pull the pins out.
Oh, look out.
All right, if you pull the pins out, we could slide that, we could slice that right down. We got the leading edge tack glued on. You can carve that right in. Doesn't have to even be perfect, John, just so we don't have any extra material there.
Yeah, we just sand it off.
And then we'll take that big block and just block sand it right in before we glue the skin on. When we get down to the last little bit here, John will just break the triangle away. All we want to do is get a rough in the leading edge, and we're going to flip it over and glue the skins.
Okay. All right, suck it up, Wendy.
Should have that little brush that goes on there.
Yeah.
Somebody borrowed it, I guess. Let's get that the table half there.
Cardboard layout, zip, zip.
There now.
Okay, suck it
I
together a
will-
little.
I won't be flying this because I'll have
You have salvo fly it or what?
No, not salvo. I'll have either Walter Bojo or one with the cellar.
Yeah.
Okay, you can break that off the table now, and then we'll just flip it over. Get all that CA and everything off of there. Just roll it to me.
All right.
Roll it. Get a couple of pins, George. And then you're actually
Let me get here. Let me get the block on it. Let me roll it.
Roll it with the block if that's
Where's
easy.
that? Yeah, it is easier. Yes. Then I don't have to push it individually on ribs.
Roll it right to me, even more. Okay, pin some.
Okay.
Yeah, you don't have to have it totally perfect. And then we'll start at the front and CA it right in. I don't see any ribs that aren't
No,
touching.
no, they're good. They're good. They're good.
Okay, pin them all in. If you hold it right in that position,
Yep.
John, don't let it move.
You want to freeze it?
Wait, I want to do one at a time, right up to the spar. Okay, and then we'll re-roll it.
Okay.
Okay, well, let me go down one so I can grab it with my hand this way.
All right. Got it?
Freeze it.
Okay.
Okay, let's go to the next one. Freeze it. Let me get my hand in it.
Got it.
Freeze it. Okay. Second. See what I'm doing, George? I'm working right up to the spar. Then we'll work from the spar back. The pins just keep it from flopping around.
This is off in the back there. You want me to not pin back here?
No, don't pin it if it's,
Okay.
if it's crooked. We want to get it up to the spar first. Okay, you got your...
Yep.
Okay.
Now they're up there nice and tight.
Oh, I can see. Yeah, there's
Yeah,
no
they're
clearance at
tight,
all
yeah.
in there. That's
Yeah.
good.
Good. They're good. They're up tight.
Okay.
Yep.
Work my way right down.
This one here has got a little clearance.
Well, we don't care.
Not towards it apart, but I don't think it's because of the angle of the rib spacing.
Get my hand in
Okay.
there. Okay. You got your hand under there, George?
Yeah, right. Run it.
I got my hand over there.
Okay, get the pressure on that front piece.
Okay. That's
Okay,
it.
now we're up to the spar. Let that kick off.
That's it.
Once that kicks, then we'll do the back.
You do this with number one yet?
Yeah. Yep.
Just hold that down with the block and we'll run the ribs this way. All right, let those kick and we go right away up.
Yeah.
Irrelevant. Leave a quarter of an inch. We're going to just pull the sheeting together at the very end. Give me a little more. Another. So that the smallest one is a quarter of an inch. Okay, and I'm up here. All right, and just trim this off. Now when you bring the other one, when you block sand it in, we'll... Ah! Whoop, just cut his finger off.
Hey, I heard he did that.
Okay, John's trimming the excess off of there. And it's getting to be time. We'll do that other wing half and then we'll go to lunch. Andrea's for lunch.
I'll cut it so I don't...
All right. I'll get this skin ready. You guys are almost... You got to jig up that other wing, right, John? Almost ready for the skin? Getting ready to join the wing halves here. What an exciting day. This is about as exciting as it gets, John.
You got a little square here, right there? No.
There's a tri-square on the end of the table.
There's a T-square.
What he's going to do now is make the plywood brace for the center. He's already got the wing halves glued together.
That's it.
Go, baby, go. This is a one-day wing. Now I got the vice grips here, gluing the spar in with alphatic, so that can dry tonight, and tomorrow we'll pick up back with the Spitfire. But just what I said, I guess this morning it proved to be true. This whole thing was pretty much done in one session, and it was a it was a long day. All right, it's back. Here's my sandpaper. Ah, right on the table. We are in such good shape on George's wing. I'm thrilled to death. His wing is over there drying today. What I want to do now, I want to finish up the two tails. The area that I glassed, I want to take some 320 paper and a little block, and I'll just do one side on camera. It doesn't take a whole lot of sanding to get that blended in. You actually should be able to do it in under 5 minutes. Notice I have the little Bob Martens type of block. Yesterday was some session. We really had fun. John DeTavio is going to be trying to do a foam wing with that clear tape. We ran a little test with that tape off camera. We laminated 2 pieces of wood together and put them out in the pouring rain. It was raining yesterday, and even the rain didn't hurt them, so we look forward to doing a test on that maybe Monday night. Again, you got to check it with your hands. That glass, for all purposes, that's the 7.5 ounce cloth. If you use half-ounce cloth, the real light stuff, you obviously want to double up on the center where it goes in the body. Now, it serves 2 purposes. When the elevators are up, and I've mentioned this, all the stress is right at the end of the elevators. That's where it wants to bend. It also serves the purpose of when this mounts into the fuselage, if you can picture the fuselage where my fingers are, it doesn't do this and put a stress riser right at the fillet. So even though this doesn't have a joint in the center of it, it's a good investment to get that center glass. Now what I'm going to do, I'll do the other one. I'll do the other side even off camera. What I'm going to do is final sand both of these out, take my time, get them perfect, weigh them, give Joe the lighter of the 2, and then I'll be, we're going to actually start the finish now. You know, from time to time, there's different ways, obviously, that you can finish a plane, but my choice is always to build a wing and tail first, and that lets me know roughly how much this plane is going to be. Once I weigh the tail, I'll have some real rough idea, and then I'll know how long to make the nose moment arm. If this tail is under 3 ounces, well, we'll know we can get away with a relatively short nose, 10 1/4. If all of a sudden this tail is 4 ounces or more, or if you built a super, now Jimmy had a real heavy tail in his PM, if you're above 4 ounces, well, you want to think about what the alternatives are. Maybe making the nose a little bit longer, or some other little, well, maybe making a new tail, which what Jimmy is doing right now is making a new tail for his PM that he's repairing. So if you understand what the philosophy is if you start off with a light plane that's going to have specifically a light tail, you can get away with a short nose. If you, for instance, know that you're going to have a 4 ounce tail and an 18 ounce wing, you better go with a long nose moment. So, given all of that, when we get the tails finished, I'll sand the rest of this off camera. This is just redundant, boring stuff. Then the final thing is I want to get the whole tail sanded out smooth as a baby's ass. The reason for that is, and maybe I'll put that on a storyboard later, is you don't want to get that first coat of dope into a rough surface, because then you're just chopping down mountaintops and you just add day after day of extra sanding. Get it perfectly smooth at this point in time, harden up all the edges with CA, which we've done already. Glass the middle, blend the glass in, and then we'll be ready to start mixing our dope finish. Maybe by the end of the day we'll get some dope on this. Now I want to get an accurate weight on these tails. This is the time we waited for. Now don't forget, these tails have an extra special adjustable horn in the back. The fillets are already there. All the hinges are there, uncut. And we're at 83.5. So let me record this. 83. That's under 3 ounces. And of course it includes all the ray rudder linkage. Let's see which is the heavier of the two. I assume they're pretty close. Uh-oh, this one's heavier. Now keep in mind, the whole philosophy here is that we want to get Joe to lighter parts because he's going to be typically putting on a little more finish. This one is 85. This is a little over, so this one will be mine. 85.5. I want to be accurate about this too. And I'll put an H here. This is the heavy one. An L for the light one. Now I assume that'll give Joe a little bit of a head start. Keep in mind, one of the things Joe is the ultimate craftsman, super craftsman, but his finishes tend to be a little heavy. So when you know you're going to have heavy finishing, it's a good idea to get the parts light. If you know you can put, like I know typically I can get a super light finish on and it'll still look front row. Well, I can put a little more weight in mine. And what we're trying to do is have the both Spitfires weigh exactly the same so I can trim them equally, get the CG equally, whatever. Now, Mike Rogers offered to help us with this. He's real good about setting up the CG into the body dimensions, but we need to know what the wing and tail weigh in silver before he can make that calculation. And we'll be conferring with him, of course, on that. Okay, so we don't need the grain scale anymore. One tail came out, let's see, less than 2 grams heavier. Now, if you want it to be a mistake, I've done this, boy, believe me. I've taken a tail that was perfect and said, it's a little bit too heavy, and sanded it to death until the sheeting was all rippled. What ultimately happened was you put on 7 extra coats of filler to fill in all the gouges. This is a nice straight tail. Also, another thing, at this point in time, I want to take plenty rigid the same in both dimensions. You don't want to build yourself up a pretzel. That's one of the problems you get, especially if you have a foam tail with a joint in the middle. And then you try to leave off the glass or sand the glass to the point where it breaks. So anyway, all right, we're pretty much ready to start mixing some dope for this guy. Now it's that time that we have to decide on a finish. We're at the point where we're going to start putting finish on the plane. Obviously, step 1 is going to be to get everything sanded smooth, beautifully smooth. Step 1. Step 2 is I want to mix up a batch of dope. Now this dope is typically going to be about 1/3 dope, roughly, somewhere between 1/2 and 2/3 thinner. This is the batch. This is going on raw wood. Now the mistake, most common mistake to make, biggest mistake you can make, is to put this material on too thick. If you put it on too thick, you'll try to do it in 1 or 2 coats and you think, oh boy, I'm saving weight, I only put 2 coats on. No, you're not saving weight. The thinner eventually will gas off. First choice would be to put on a thin coat. That thin coat is going to swell the wood. Give it another thin coat, it's going to swell it even more. Then we're going to have to sand it back down, block sand it down flat. And I know what you're thinking, this is real time consuming, but in the long run it isn't. And after the 3rd coat, well, it'll just swell it just a little bit. But then when we sand that down, what we're going to have is, hopefully before we tissue it, a really nice flat area. Then the tissue will lay flat right on top. And if you have this concept in your mind, if the tissue, if the tissue rides up here, what you're going to be doing is sanding off all the mountaintops, or filling in all those valleys. I'm sure I've gone over this many times, but this is the secret to the super light finish, and you do it early on in the program. So once we get to this point, and we have flat wood, flat tissue, we won't need 1,000 coats of filler. We'll just need filler to just fill in the slightest little gaps and dings, and there'll be very little filler in the final finish. Then when we put our silver on, probably within 1 or 2 coats, and wet sand it off, it's going to be just beautiful. But remember, this whole process from start to finish, start 2/3 thinner, 1/3 dope. Each coat, add a little bit of dope if you want to speed it up. I would say on raw wood, you probably, when you do it this thin, you're going to need 5 to 6 coats. You have to have the wood have a little bit of dope still sitting out on top after you do the sanding. The reason for that is you want to get some bind in there. Here's what happens if you put it on thick. The wood grain will be a little bit rough like this. And what happens, the thick dope just lays up on the top here. And what happens, these are little air pockets. You put the plane out in the sun, and I'm sure everybody has seen this happen. And here's what happens to your buffed out finish. The grain comes back. Well, what we want to do is get the dope so thin that it fills in all these little things before we tissue it. If you get this concept in your mind that you're going to fill in these little gouges, it's going to add almost no weight. Then you put it out in the sun, and hopefully the whole thing won't have these little air bubbles, air pockets, that are going to be blowing up and sinking, and you're going to have to rebuff the plane 40 times. This is the whole key to, in my feeling, the whole key to a good finish is the wood preparation, getting the dope on thin. Even if you have to put 10 coats, who cares? Let it swell the wood, because you don't want to have this all sanded out and then you put clear on and it swells the wood. Let it swell the wood now. The wood is only going to swell and reset once, and once it does, you're home free all. Now here's tip number 1. Biggest single investment you want to make. Somewhere in the world, somehow, you want to locate some 3608S thinner. This is choice 1 for all the thinners that you can buy. This was a good choice up until about a year ago when they reformulated it down into an EPA more friendly formula. The V3608S, bingo. If you can replace it with this or even Sig thinner, you're going to be ahead of. So a Sig thinner is $20 a gallon. This is about $9. Joe found this in Pennsylvania. He found some states it's still legal to sell it. You can buy it in Ohio. You can buy it in Pennsylvania. I don't know about California. But even if you have to order it from somewhere and have it shipped in, it is worth getting this. The reason is this thinner does not go down and penetrate into the wood anywhere near as much as the Sig thinner. It dries quickly, nicely, and without fogging. This tends to fog, and by the time you get the fogging out, you have to add retarder. The retarder now is about $42 a gallon, so if possible, get this out of your program. Try like hell to get some of this, even if you have to make an 800 call to DuPont and find some place, have it shipped in by rail or truck or whatever. 1 5-gallon can will probably do more than a plane, so this is the best tip ever. Try to get 3608S. Now what I did is I went down to Randolph. I bought a gallon of their butyrate thinner. This is about $20 a gallon from Randolph. And there's people within Pampa that sell it too and probably would ship it to you. It's probably roughly double the price. $37, $39, $79, I always get that wrong, is the retarder. If you absolutely positively have to spray or on a very humid day and you want to add some, this is the retarder of choice. $42 a gallon in the New York area. Again, this material, and I'm just doing it for a point of reference, I'm going to use this up to clean guns, clean brushes, whatever. Not going to use this at any point in the building of the Spitfires. This will be the 3 choices. This will be choice 1, and if I run out or can't get any more, I'll substitute it. Especially in the finish coats, this would probably be good enough. And if I have to, a little bit of retarder. Those are the products. They're worth driving cross country for. They're worth researching out how you can get them shipped to your house. They're certainly the best I've found over the years. Now we're at the end of this tape, and we're gonna pick this up on the next tape with our finishing routine. But this is the other product you want to have in inventory: Sikkens M600. What I'll do is I'll find the 800 number for you here. If you can't get this anywhere locally, where the hell is the 800 number? Probably the best thing would be to call 800-424-9300. That's their industrial number, and find out who sells it locally. This is a little more expensive than Prepsol and about 100 times better. I found this to be the material of choice for all my finish sanding. So we're going to pick up the finish on the next tape. This is a good time to get all your materials in order, get your wood sanded down, and let's get into some really nice light finishing.